This is Sway.
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 In the morning.
In the morning.
In the morning.
O'Shea goes by.
Wake your fuck ass up. That crust out, y'all.
Junior prom. Sarah Richardson and Penny Caraway. Together. I knew exactly what I was doing.
That was from Grey's Anatomy.
Just,
Our guest was listening like, what the hell is this? What does that have to do with what we're doing today? And
Who was Penny Caraway?
yeah. Right, I didn't get that. They were talking about virginity at that time, doing that clip.
That sounds right.
Yeah, right. And Jackson Avery, who is played by the extremely talented one and only Jesse Williams, who's with us today.
woo!
What up?
Was in that clip. You know, and when I said you were coming up to the show, different people got excited for different reasons.
People that owe money.
Yeah. Well, there's some folks you owe money.
Sure.
Ah,
I was excited because we've known each other for a while now, and we always bump into each other in the fanciest places. And I just saw you at the White House Correspondents' Dinner.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's
right? What you end up doing afterwards, man?
Oh, it got kind of crazy. We went to some party. You know, there's always a plan at these things to hit up a couple spots.
Yeah.
And you go to the first spot, and if it really is lit, then you just
You
end
just
up
stay
staying
there.
all night. I think
Yeah.
we were at Vanity Fair till like
Vanity
3
Fair,
in
he
the morning.
threw that
yeah.
out there. He's at Vanity Fair. I
it
didn't
be getting crazy at the after parties following the White House
It was weird. It's
correspondent
completely
lit.
weird going there. I mean, well, this one was because this is where all the folks ended up.
Yeah.
So it ended up actually being kind of fun. But that whole atmosphere, I'd never been to that dinner or been around that DC politics, House of Cards
Really?
vibe, where it never has happened. So, but going there, you're around people that are really interesting, and also just like people that are horrible people, right? In terms of these
Damn.
politicians, right? There's a lot of
Yeah.
hardcore right-wing politicians that actually like enforce incredible discriminatory policies that are really, really problematic, right? All in the same room, like everybody's kind of like it's an off night. We're just gonna chill and party and drink, like you not some horrible demon.
Yeah, right.
That's
Well,
like.
One night only, though.
Yeah, it's a weird atmosphere.
And they slip in those those horrible policies and conversation, the more drinks
Right,
that you have. That's like my fourth time going there, so it
Okay.
was great. First time I went there, I didn't see anybody I recognized. You know?
No melanin in the building.
Nah, not much, and definitely not in the way of artists. You know, and
Creatives.
creatives. You know, but seeing you there, I thought that was really great. Plus, I know you're very. You know, you're really proactive. You know, I follow you on Twitter, and you're very outspoken, and you were very active in the Black Lives Matter movement from the time it became national news, and you've continued to work so much so that you executive produced a new documentary. It's called Stay Woke, the Black Lives Matter Movement. That's premiering at 9 p.m. this Thursday on BET.
That's right. This
Yes.
Thursday,
Get him
everybody
in a
tune in.
round of applause. He's EPing.
It's dope.
He's an EP.
You gotta diversify your bonds. Sway.
Yeah, you got to diversify. and this is interesting because, you know, there's a lot of myths that surround the Black Lives Matter movement. And, you know, it's gotten a lot of resistance for whatever reason. I don't understand.
Black. That's what.
Is that's what it
Well,
is?
sure.
Okay.
It's
Help
young
me out.
black. It's young black people.
Yeah.
Standing up straight
Standing up straight.
for themselves and to saying they deserve some dignity, and so that's gonna put a target on its back. So that stuff, that propaganda stuff, we dispel a fair amount of that, and address some of there's flaws in everything. So nobody's pretending to be perfect. It's a growing movement.
You talk about that. One of the things you say is black people don't want to change laws or create laws for them, and specifically, they just want the laws to apply fairly.
Yeah, we're
Right?
constantly, anytime any disenfranchised group or oppressed group is resisting said oppression and standing up for themselves and asking, what about us? We pay taxes, right? And people always pretend, oh, well, you're trying to create something separate. Oh, well, you need some kind of special attention. Oh, well, that's reverse discrimination or some bullshit. I can say that, right?
Yeah, say go ahead.
It's nonsense, right? It's just to uphold a power structure. We've been fighting on the front lines of every war that this country has ever fought.
Same.
We're just asking to be part of the laws that have already been on the books.
Yeah.
Period. Can we walk down the street with can I use the hood on my sweatshirt, sir?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Can I walk home after grabbing some snacks? Like, that's all.
Yeah.
So we just like to reboil this stuff down to basics and stop playing with the Fox News bullshit of it all, where we pretend that there's some extra outlying factors that make us somehow wanting special treatment. Y'all get special treatment.
Right.
You've always gotten special treatment. Step aside.
Step aside. You say since 1619
That's right.
that there hasn't been a week that a black person in America, at least one,
Has not been in a state of crisis.
Yes.
Yeah, it's been a
What
constant...
do you mean by that? Since
Well,
1619
is when the first record of an African being enslaved and sold here.
Okay.
So that's when you were on the books. Obviously, we were on this continent for over a century before then, from Mexico into other parts of the Americas. But that's a different story. But the reference is we have always been in a state of crisis. Our bodies, our souls, our ability to have autonomy over ourselves and make decisions and choices in this country has always been under violent, aggressive threat.
Yeah.
That's just a matter of fact, right? So for people to want to stand up for themselves and ask that if we have public servants in positions, we should probably have a monitoring system as to how many of us they kill. That are unarmed, that are children, that are mentally unstable. Should we probably look at police accountability? Is that fair to say that people should be accountable for themselves? Because I know that anytime a black person burps or farts, they've got to be accountable for themselves, and they got to pick themselves up by their bootstraps. And the whole community needs to denounce any other black person that has made a mistake or coughed wrong. Yeah. While we constantly apologize for other crimes. There's just a double standard, and we're getting used to watching each other address that and like I said, stand up for themselves. And I'm really proud of this generation. We talk about young folks being lazy and not wanting to participate in their community, and millennials being just kind of, there's a lot of negativity around that energy. But look, Ferguson happened. Yeah. And people stood up for themselves, not only one night, not 2 nights, not 3 nights, weeks and months and years now, and it's impacting policy. It's one thing to be upset and yell, but people are directly impacting policy and power now. And politicians show up in your town, they have to come correct if they're going to speak on them. If they're going to come to your, what happened with Ted Cruz trying to come up to the Bronx? Yeah, kids ain't having it.
Kids weren't having it.
And where do they get that from? They watch other people who look like them. Figure out a way to vocalize and articulate their positions, understand how the situations we find ourselves in are directly impacted by policy.
Yeah. What is your rebuttal to because that's a direct effect of watching what happened in Ferguson, what we saw young people do in the Bronx. But then you'll have critics who will say, well, that's hashtag what they call it, hashtag activism.
Yeah. It's nonsense. Okay. There's 20 big hashtags a day. Yeah. Was Ice Bucket Challenge hashtag activism? What's hashtag activism? If it was only folks tweeting. Yeah. If it was just us tweeting, it would just be a hashtag, and that would be hashtag activism. But people are actually going into the halls of power and changing legislation. Bernie Sanders now has a well-established policy addressing black lives, addressing police accountability, addressing mass incarceration and systematic racism. Hillary Clinton, you can't show up and have these conversations with us unless you're going to address our needs. We're not giving it away for free anymore.
Yes. Okay.
So people are demanding not giving away their vote. Not just handing it off just because you're a Democrat. You have to, these are things that, Ferguson, it changed the entire map of their structure in terms of policing and local governance. It's changed now. It's not the same. So that ain't hashtag activism. That's people occupying a space and having a list of demands. University of Missouri.
Yeah. Exactly. They stood up against the sports system and the president.
And you utilize what you have at your disposal, which was black athletes. Which fund this entire free organization of colleges.
Beautiful. I thought that was beautiful.
Use what you have. Yeah. Stand up. Yeah. It's something. When we realize how many of us there are, both globally and on a national level, you got to use your voice if you expect to get results. And nobody's ever gotten respect. No community or people has ever gotten respect in this country without demanding it.
Jesse Williams is here. The documentary he EP'd is called Stay Woke, the Black Lives Matter Movement, which is premiering Thursday, 9 p.m. on BET. Man, we're going to open up the phone lines. You want to chime in? Got a question for Jesse? If you agree with him, even if you disagree, it's okay. 888-742-3345. Give us a call.
We've seen young protesters without organized leadership. And so there is a question about where the movement goes from here.
That's a clip from Stay Woke, the Black Lives Matter Movement, premiering Thursday, 9 p.m. on BET. Executive produced by Jesse Williams, who's here with us right now. This is really interesting, man, because the making of the movement so to speak. It's always you don't always get a chance to see that. Usually when you do, it's like decades later. You know? I had Sekou Odinga from the Black Panther movement, who was here with Michael McCarty, who stood alongside Fred Hampton, and we were talking about their 50th year celebration. It's an icon exhibit series that's going to be traveling to different cities, and different artists going to be contributors to this exhibit. And I was making parallels to the code that the Black Panthers lived by. The list of demands that the Black Panthers wanted back in 1966, and some of their requests reflected a society then that was parallel to a society now.
Sure.
All the conditions, were the same. And I was asking them about Black Lives Matter and the movement that we're seeing today. Is it not, similar in a way it was, introduced and how it was created? And they noted the similarities of the conditions in the society. Sure. So I wanted to ask you, too, the elder activists, have they been on board, or what has that process been like?
I think that it's a yes and no. I think that there is certainly, because that's a wide net, right? Elder activists. Certainly, there is much to be gleaned from our elders, folks who have, that's part of the tradition, right? Is to certainly absorb information. People who have been there before. You want to learn from those who've been there before. There may, however, be, this generation is looking to figure out solutions to our problems now, for ourselves, and that means not a reflexive reliance on the devices and mechanisms that folks have used just as a default, right? We're not just going to, okay, what did MLK and Jesse Jackson do? All right, that's where we're starting. That's not the foundation. In this case, the foundation here is living in abject poverty, generational poverty, which is a device of white supremacy as a system, as governance, right? Whereas the construction of the white suburbs and subsidizing loans and making it illegal for Black people to enjoy upward mobility, illegal to buy homes outside of the hood, redlining, things like that. So you have responses to that, responses to police brutality, police violence, which happens, but really it's really about the lack of accountability after we experience police violence. So I think that there's there has certainly been a rift, there's certainly been issues, but really that's about, like, we're not going to use traditional means, and I say we for other folks, not necessarily myself at all times, but we're not going to use, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result is what? Right? Insanity.
That's insanity. Yeah.
So how can we make adjustments to try to improve our conditions now? And that's going to be a trial and error thing. And we're talking about 15-year-olds, talking about 25-year-olds, 35-year-olds, 45-year-olds, trying to figure this out together, live and in the moment. They're pushed into this. Right. This isn't a whole generation of folks who've studied this their whole life and planned. This is not their, like, this is what I'm going to do after high school. This is what I'm going to do because there's a dead body outside of my window.
And you have the original founders of the Black Lives Movement a part of this documentary?
Alicia Garza, Patrice Cullors, and Opal Tometi, founders of the Black Lives Matter hashtag, which has become a network and organization.
Okay.
Jesse, this was some months ago, a really progressive conversation with Macklemore. And, he put out that track, White Privilege, and right before the very public's eyes, he's been trying to figure out his position, his responsibility when it comes to the Black Lives Matter campaign. And I'm wondering, since you began working with Black Lives Matter, have you seen an increase or a decrease with just folks from our white communities that are coming in as allies and really just wanting to help with just making sure that everything receives the opportunity to change?
Yeah, certainly. Look, there's been, I've said this before on Twitter, we can selectively choose, like, what part of our heritage we want to attach ourselves to and feel obligated to replicate. There have been very few, if any, productive liberation movements in this country that have not benefited from association with and contributions from white allies. Period. That's as much a part of white tradition as oppression.
Right.
White folks have been walking alongside, and contributing to the process and the pursuit of liberation for people, as well as as other folks. So embrace that side of your heritage.
Yeah.
That said, allyship is something that requires deference and patience and paying attention and not trying to make it about yourself. And I think
Right.
some folks have certainly struggled. Not really realizing how much, what white privilege really is and how insidious and pervasive it is, because you find yourself wanting to figure out, well, what about me? What about me? What about me? Guess what? It's not about you today.
Not today.
But that means you can find other ways to be creative. And what it really is about at its core, it's very hard. Nobody's doing this perfectly. I'm
Right.
not, not trying to rip folks down. It's about, are you curious? Like, having curiosity is a really important tool that folks sometimes overlook in terms of what you want to be in life, where you want to go, what kind of career you want to look for. If you don't know, this is something my dad used to always say to me, if you don't know, find out. It's just a very basic rule, because sometimes we find ourselves just living a life of just like, I don't know, I'm going to pretend I know.
Yeah.
It's really just take a step aside, make a note to yourself, and go find that out tonight before you go to bed. Do a little bit of research.
Yeah.
Figure out how I can contribute to this conversation. That's same for men dealing with patriarchy.
Yeah.
Right.
We all carry around incredible gender bias and sexism and patriarchy and habits that we've been taught. When we were kids, homophobia was a lot more
big.
pervasive and part of just like a reflexive way you treat people. And as you get to know folks and meet people that are represented in those communities, you should be growing along with everything else.
Yeah, I'm still dealing with the patriarchy thing too, man, in my
Sure.
household. Yeah, man. I don't want to do no dishes. You know
Get
what I
it
mean?
together, Calloway.
Yeah, it's your house.
Jesse went, hey, man, I lost that battle a long time ago.
I wanted to ask because it's clear that you're passionate about this, and it's not just something that you're doing just to add another credit to your resume
Sure.
and everything. Like you're very serious about this topic. But what I wanted to know was me being a movie guy,
Yeah.
and they did you dirty in Cabin in the Woods, by the way.
Word.
But with regards to Hollywood, some people might argue that they're given the same movies about you did The Butler. And people might say, we don't need any more of those movies. Like, we've done enough of these, slavery themed and stuff like
Yep.
that. But some people might say, on the other side of that, is that we do need these movies to tell these stories. I just wondered what your opinion was.
I'm glad you asked. That's an interesting topic. I think that I get it, right? There is what's baked into representations of being subordinate in slavery or being of service in The Butler. That carries with it an incredible woven in to the fabric of your DNA shame. It's fucking embarrassing.
Yeah.
It's uncomfortable. It's awkward. I remember somebody had tweeted when 12 Years came out, like, oh, I'm so tired of these slavery movies. And it's like, what slavery movies, brother? What slavery movies are you talking about? What are all these slavery movies that we have?
American history.
Slavery happened for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
It is what we've all come from. What are all these slavery movies? You can't name me 6 slavery movies. You can name me 5 Holocaust movies that came out in the last 24 months, which is wonderful, which is good.
Yeah.
We want diversity of thought. There's not one narrative that happened that happened during the period of enslavement. I love exploring. I'm a history teacher, right? I'm biased. I love history, but we have been separated from our history, but our history cannot be limited to subordination, right? Our history has to be the foundation of civilization on this planet. Things that you think are Greek and Roman that are actually African and from Egypt. But so I like to have as many. I like that we have now underground and roots and diverse representations of the human beings that were enslaved, because so much of this impacts policy. This impacts what's happening now, is that you think that black people ain't shit because you never heard of anything that told you that anybody that looked like Sway has ever been shit, ever. So when he gets his life taken by a cop or his own brother, whoever, he didn't really have that much potential to begin with.
Yeah.
White supremacy is deep. It's about it's like about dehumanizing folks, right? We have to dehumanize. To use an example that works much better because it involves whiteness in many ways, but if we have to dehumanize gays during the AIDS epidemic, because that impacts the way we employ policy towards their lives and their ability to pursue dignity in a hospital, right? Like if you don't, so I think that we certainly need more. I taught continental African history. We need movies about that.
Yeah,
we don't need this gods of Egypt white worship nonsense.
Yeah, that was crazy.
That's
crazy.
But look how much money they're willing to lose on a movie that is trash to make sure to keep programming us to believe that they somehow had anything to do with any of that.
Yeah, building pyramids and all those great things.
But that's a good
great question.
And we have to keep struggling with that. It's gonna feel weird. You don't want to go back to the center of the crime. You don't want to go back to that feeling. But we can explore some of the incredible heroism in it. They're apparently making a Harriet Tubman movie.
Okay,
that's the real. That's like
the realness.
One of the most incredible human beings to ever walk the face of the earth. Like we want that. We want women to see the empowerment. People coming from a bad situation and figure out ways to. She's a fucking boss.
Yes.
Like we need to see that.
Jesse Williams is here. Stay Woke, the Black Lives Matter movement, premiering Thursday at 9 p.m. on BET. Jesse, what's your social media, too, so people can hit you?
Social media is the letter I, Jesse Williams, and Jesse. People stay spelling male Jesse, Jessie. I don't know what the thing is.
I always spelled it with the E, man.
It's, I, Jesse Williams on Instagram and on Twitter.
All right, we got Young Junior in Providence on the line. What up?
Yo, what's good, Sway? Tracy, oh man, this is just an honor and like a great privilege to be talking to you right now and being live on air. I'm a long-time listener, first-time caller.
Thank you.
And I appreciate what you're doing for hip-hop and everything and influencing the youth and everything like that because, growing up, came out of diversity. And I just wanted to chime in on what Jesse Williams was saying. I'm multicultural, I'm and also multiracial. Like, my father is Mexican and indigenous Indian, to this country and stuff. And, my mom on her side, she's European and black and Indian and shit. So, I understand about what he said about, nobody in this country got to get the respect that they wanted without, showing it. They worked for it, like the African American community, the Jewish community, the Hispanic community. We're still struggling. Like, that's the part of me I embrace the most is my Hispanic heritage and everything like that because, where, there's not really too many stories about what happened, to us in World War II and what happened to us during the slave trading, times and everything like that. So it's like, where's our story? You know what I mean?
Good point, Young Junior. Are you voting this year?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah, of course.
That's good. Good point. Make sure you watch BET at Thursday at 9 p.m.
It's way.
All right. See, and that's the kind of that's the kind of reaction I like to hear. Because otherwise, Young Junior probably would be calling for something totally different. So that's why I'm glad you're here.
It's a beautiful thing.
Hey man, listen. I've watched the conversation change in the past 5 years.
Yeah.
Exactly. I watch it elevate. And I watch people become present and aware. Unfortunately, it's been at the telling of tragedy, but but the people are activated now. Casey in Chicago, go ahead, Casey.
These are all my cities.
What's
right
up,
here.
Sway?
What's up,
Jesse?
What up?
Hey, thanks for being on, and I just wanted to say two things real quick. One is, I'm a Indian American immigrant to this country. And, came up with traditions around social protest and transformation from Gandhi to MLK. But I frankly love the Malcolm X aspect of what Black Twitter is doing is getting in the face and confronting the sense of urgency or lack of urgency of changing policy. And I think that's definitely some new stuff that has to be admired and respected. And it ruffles a lot of feathers. But it says when Donald Trump came to Chicago, we weren't having it, like you said, Sway. And we've heard those messages, and those are not free speech messages. That's hate speech. And we don't need to hear that and have our dignity and our sense of community destroyed by that kind of talk. You have something new to say? Let's hear it. The thing I want to say about Black Twitter is, and Black Lives Matter is, more importantly, is if Black Lives Matter is outside of the traditional political process at this point, they're not fully, they're not all elected officials, et cetera. When there is a good deal to be had, when somebody offers concessions or makes policy changes and improvements, what's the evolution of Black Lives Matter in terms of being able to formally negotiate with those, people in power, people making decisions, people passing laws, and who's going to be able to speak for that movement? And just as a broader question, I've watched this trend of how do you get Latino, Asian American, and other allies, right, non-white allies, Black and brown allies, to get on board with this transformation.
Mm-hmm. That's a great question, Casey. Great questions. What are your thoughts on that?
It's a reasonable, certainly a reasonable series of questions. Let's see where to begin. We have what did we start with there? That was So if people are this like hypothetical, if folks in policymakers, if legislators want to make change, who do they deal with? I mean that the structure already exists. For that, we have had members of the movement start. There's constantly this reform versus revolution kind of struggle. Do folks want to kind of acclimate themselves into the system as it is? And there's certainly flaws with that. The system is what got us here in the first place, right? Or do we need to break it up? Or that's reform versus revolution. Do we need to smash this thing to pieces? Do we need to talk about reforming prisons, or do we need to abolish prison the way it is because it ain't working? So these struggles are what folks have. Again, this movement is, and it's certainly in its adolescence. You just started in this form on August 9th when Mike Brown was killed. There are incredible organizations all over the country that are affiliated with the movement that do incredible work around policy, like Advancement Project, and have incredible smart lawyers that directly impact these things, and are a conduit for such conversations. But I think more importantly, when are those policies going to come to the fore? Yeah. I think we have to be careful about kind of spending too much time focusing on like the what if, the how if, the conditional, that it's kind of become somewhat related, and I don't think that was this gentleman's intention at all. Becomes related to kind of like how putting conditions on when are you going to be ready to receive it when it comes? How about it just comes? It's not necessarily, it becomes a revolutionary act. He talked about kind of a Malcolm, something that comes off of Malcolm X's teaching, which is kind of or his behavior really, which is being what one would consider like confrontational or provocative, or being upfront about issues. Really, what is there's an old like Howard Zinn speech that's about like what's really wild is not the civil disobedience, it's civil obedience. Like it's not revolutionary for us to not want it to be okay and celebrated to be killed in the street on television, as Eric Garner was, and have no accountability. It's wild and crazy and insane for that to be normal. Yeah. The ones that are not in the streets, y'all are the ones that are tripping. Like y'all are the ones that need to explain yourselves. That's what's wild. But it's become so normal that we just sit and watch and ask why these folks are in the streets. How are you not? Yeah. I know you would be if that person had a different color, hair and texture and skin tone. Yeah. But larger, programmatically, these are questions that everybody is asking and answering and figuring out, both at local levels. One of the things that is unique about Black Lives Matter, I will say, about the movement for Black Lives at large, is really focusing on being kind of like a leaderless movement, right? Not having a head that can be lopped off. I think folks are wary of watching all of our Black leaders be killed, and then things kind of dissipate and kind of slow down dramatically and scramble. So we've made sure all over the country for people to be locally active, really grassroots, focused on your local community needs, and build up from there. And we can network now because we have social media, we have ways to communicate, and we can be together in this and learn. This documentary, Stay Woke, on Thursday at 9 on BET really deals with that, as much as we can within the time limit of growing pains and figuring out how do we deal with adversity, how do we deal with the total predictability of entire networks dedicated to ripping us down, which, by the way, have no actual interest in our freedom or liberation. They're just there because they want us to get back to work.
Jesse Williams, man, this is awesome. If folks want to join the movement in their town, how do they do it? Do they just go to the hashtag and ask, or do they?
Yeah, basically. I mean, there are ways that are on its face, there are Black Lives Matter chapters, for example, in several places, somewhere reasonably near you. But there are also plenty of other incredible work you can be doing. You can be tutoring kids. You can be helping what's happening in the foster homes in your area. What's happening? There's a lot of ways to be human beings and share love and leadership and donate some of your time and energy to people around you. I think that is a muscle that you can just start exercising. Yeah. It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to necessarily be directly tied to civil disobedience or social justice to begin with. Get used to caring about something other than yourself and your Instagram likes, and then start tuning in and connecting kind of locally with folks on. Use the tools at your disposal, and online will tell you where shit's popping.
Jesse Williams, ladies and gentlemen. Stay woke, the Black Lives Matter movement on BET, 9 p.m. on Thursday. Hey, man, you got to keep coming up here, man, when you're in town, man.
I'd be happy to. I miss New York badly, so I try to get here as much as I can.
Absolutely, and it's always great to see you, man. I'm really, really inspired by your work, all right?
Thank you. Thank you guys for being here. A big part of this is also us having outlets to be able to communicate.
Well,
right? Radio matters. The airwaves matter. So it's nice for us to be able to have a spot where that can be lifted up. These are all platforms.
These are all platforms, right? And that's why I'm here. All right, Jesse. All right, so up next, Nappy Roots are going to join us for the A&R Room, Sway in the morning. Then Mario Van Peebles is going to join us a little later. Shea 45.
It's Sway in the morning, only
on Shea 45.